As David stands at the altar, moments away from marrying Lisa, his young daughter Emma suddenly rushes down the aisle, handing him a mysterious note. Confused, David reads the words that instantly change everything. The wedding comes to a screeching halt as shocking truths are revealed, leaving both the guests and the couple in stunned silence. What could be so devastating that it would cause David to cancel the wedding on the spot? The answer lies in Emma's innocent hands and a betrayal that runs far deeper than anyone could have imagined. But before we dive in, leave a comment and let us know where you are watching from today. And if this story speaks to you, hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories. David Lawson was a man of quiet charm and steady ambition. Known for his thriving real estate business, his calm demeanor, and a smile that could put anyone at ease, he seemed to have it all. His life was marked by success, but not without its challenges. David had been a single father for years, raising his daughter, Emma, after his first marriage ended in heartbreak. It was just the two of them for a long time, and while the responsibilities of being a single dad were tough, Emma was his world. Now, David was standing on the verge of what should have been the happiest day of his life. His wedding to Lisa, a beautiful, confident woman who had swept him off his feet 2 years ago. Lisa had met David during a real estate conference in another city. She was everything he thought he wanted in a partner: elegant, ambitious, and full of life. They had connected instantly, and after a whirlwind romance, David had proposed. His heart was full as he thought of starting a new chapter, not just for himself but for Emma too. Emma was 7, a shy and thoughtful little girl with wide, curious eyes. She adored her father, and David hoped she would grow to love Lisa as much as he did. The church was decorated with white roses and lavender, Emma's favorite flowers, and the air buzzed with excitement. Friends, family, and colleagues filled the pews, chatting quietly as they waited for the ceremony to begin. David stood at the altar, his heart pounding in anticipation. The music started, and all eyes turned toward the grand doors at the back of the church. Lisa appeared, dressed in a stunning white gown that shimmered under the light, walking gracefully down the aisle. Everything was perfect, or so it seemed. But as Lisa moved closer to the altar, something unexpected happened. Emma, wearing a lavender dress that matched the flowers, suddenly darted down the aisle. There was a collective gasp from the guests as the little girl, her face pale and serious, ran straight toward Lisa. In her hand was a small folded note, which she thrust into Lisa's hands before turning and running back to her father. David looked down at Emma, confused but not alarmed. His daughter wasn't prone to outbursts, especially not in public. Lisa, too, seemed momentarily flustered, but she managed a smile as she unfolded the note, thinking it was a sweet gesture from her soon-to-be stepdaughter. But as her eyes scanned the paper, her smile faltered. Her expression shifted from confusion to shock, and then something else. Something darker. Without a word, Lisa handed the note to David. David took the paper, his heart now racing for an entirely different reason. He quickly glanced at Emma, who was clinging to his leg, and then at Lisa, whose face had turned pale. As David unfolded the note, his hands trembled slightly. The words written on that small piece of paper hit him like a punch to the gut. His eyes widened, and his breath caught in his throat as he processed what he had just read. The church fell into an eerie silence as David stared at the note. Lisa stood frozen, her once confident posture crumbling. Slowly, David looked up at her, his mind spinning with disbelief. He didn't know how to react, how to feel: betrayed, angry, devastated. The man who had always prided himself on staying calm under pressure now felt like the ground was shifting beneath him. The wedding guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, whispering in confusion. Without saying a word, David folded the note and slipped it into his pocket. His face was unreadable, but there was a storm brewing behind his eyes. He turned to the priest and shook his head slowly, his decision final. "I'm sorry," David said, his voice tight with emotion. "There won't be a wedding today." A stunned silence followed. Lisa's eyes filled with tears, her hands trembling as she tried to speak. "David, I can explain," she stammered, stepping forward. But David raised his hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "There's nothing to explain," he said quietly. "Not here. Not now." Lisa's face crumpled, and she turned away, her shoulders shaking as she silently wept. David's heart ached, not just for himself but for Emma. He looked down at his daughter, who had been clutching his hand tightly. Emma's innocent face, usually so bright and full of life, was shadowed with worry. David knelt down beside her, his voice gentle as he asked, "Emma, why did you give that note to Lisa?" Emma's eyes welled up with tears, and she whispered, "I didn't want to, Daddy. But she told me to. I found the note in her room last night. It said things I didn't understand. But I knew you needed to see it." David's heart broke as he realized that Emma, his sweet, trusting daughter, had unknowingly uncovered the truth. He hugged her tightly, tears threatening to spill from his own eyes. The note had contained a secret so devastating, it had shattered everything he thought he knew about the woman he was about to marry. As David stood up, he felt a surge of clarity. The man who had been willing to give Lisa his heart and his life now saw things for what they really were. He had been blind, caught up in the whirlwind of love, ignoring the signs, the small inconsistencies that now seemed glaringly obvious. Lisa wasn't who she pretended to be. She had been hiding a part of herself from him, a part that would have destroyed his family if Emma hadn't found that note. Lisa's betrayal wasn't just personal. It was a deception that cut deeper than he could have ever imagined. The note revealed a secret relationship, an affair she had been having for months with one of David's closest business partners. It wasn't just a mistake, it was calculated. Lisa had planned to marry David for his wealth, to secure her future while continuing her affair in the shadows. David's mind reeled as he pieced everything together. The late-night phone calls, the unexplained absences, the sudden shifts in her mood, it all made sense now. And to think, he had been on the brink of committing his life to this woman, entrusting her with his daughter's future. As David walked down the aisle, hand in hand with Emma, the guests watched in stunned silence. He didn't stop to explain, didn't offer any excuses. There was nothing left to say. The wedding was over before it had even begun. As they stepped outside the church, the cool air hit his face like a wave of clarity. Emma looked up at him, her eyes full of questions, but David just smiled softly and squeezed her hand. "We'll be okay," he said, more to himself than to her. And in that moment, David realized that sometimes the most painful truths come from the most unexpected sources. His daughter, in her innocence, had saved him from a lifetime of heartache. The wedding might have been cancelled, but in the end, David knew he had gained something far more valuable: the truth. As they walked away from the church, David's mind raced with thoughts of what the future held. He didn't know what would happen next, but he did know one thing for certain. He and Emma would face it together, without the shadow of deception hanging over their heads. And as for Lisa, she had shown her true colors, and David would never look back.